So I've just read Home After Dark by David Smalls. It's a graphic novel. It's written and illustrated by David Smalls, and released in 2018, 2019, one of the two, published. It details a really nice story of what it was actually like growing up in 1950s and 1960s California in America. I think it's a really, really fun book. I read it as part of my children's literature course, which is really weird to think about because this is definitely not a children's literature book, I would say, or not in that way we traditionally think about it. This is definitely much more. The age rating on Amazon is like 8 to 12. I would not give this to an 8-year-old. I would give this to like an 11-year-old at youngest, probably. Because yes, it is a coming of age story. And yes, it is, yes, it is a graphic novel and therefore is a lot of picture-based stuff. However, the content that it deals with is not suitable for 8 and 9 years old. It's just not. It deals with a lot of the changes that are going on in California, especially directly after the Korean War, and just changes in America in general. It deals a lot with racism and how do we deal with race, especially from the Asian American community. It does not deal so much with with a lot of what we think of when we think of race in America, of when we think of like African American heritage and things like that. It deals a lot with Asian Americans. So that's a big deal. It deals a lot with being gay and having these experiences. It deals a little bit with prostitution, things like that. It deals a lot with like how do we look at living growing up with someone who just doesn't care about who we are and what we're doing. Yeah. I mean, it's a dark book. The ending's really nice, though. I really enjoy the ending of Russell, who's a 13-year-old boy, finally figuring out what it means to be accepted and to actually what love is. Not romantic love, but this platonic, familial friend love. He finally figures that out, which is really nice. It's really, really good. But a lot of other stuff going on in here. A lot about the treatment of the gay community in the 1960s America and what that looked like, and use of words and word choice and things like that. So that's that. It's really, really beautifully illustrated. I mean, this is really the first 2 pages, and it's just a gorgeous illustration. It really is. I mean, this book is 400 pages, but it takes 2 hours to read, and mostly that's because there's not a lot of words in this. There really isn't. It is mostly picture, which I think is great. I think it's really, really a wonderful way to tell a story, especially this type of story, in which you're looking at what is regularly regarded as like this golden age of America, and like people tend to think of fondly, especially if coming from a white community, of where they tend to think that these are the golden years of America, and then actually looking at this and going, no, it really wasn't, because of all these other issues that were still going on and were still being figured out. It just looked that way and just looked great because we were white. I mean, that's really what it is. It really truly is what it is. But yeah, let's see. Anything else I want to comment on here? Let's see. Oh, another thing this book kind of touches on is guilt and the acceptance of guilt. One of the things that ends up happening here is that there's a kind of subplot to this in which there is an animal killer that's on the loose in this town that they're now living in California. And what ends up happening is one of the boys that Russell is friends with ends up finding the dog tags for this collection of dogs that they found, and then keeps them hidden, and eventually plants them on a gay kid, a kid that is fairly openly gay, and has an experience with Russell at one point. And he plants them on him, plants the dog tags on him, which then makes it seem like the queer kid is also the one going around killing dogs and animals and things like that, and eventually leads to the queer kid committing suicide. And it's just one of those things where the fallout becomes is Russell tries to run away from this home that he's kind of created in an attempt to try to apologize to the boy's mother, or the boy's grandmother. Gets out to somewhere, I don't remember the city that they were going to, but he gets out to the city and can't find her, and eventually gets the shit kicked out of him, and then gets sent back home without ever being able to apologize or to talk to the grandmother. And you know, it's just one of those things where that's just, he's, I think, 14 years old at that point in the book. There's nothing he can do about it. He has to just accept his guilt. There comes a point a couple of chapters later in which they do find the actual killer of all these dogs. And Russell says, you know, he should feel vindicated and he should feel grateful that they did it. But in the end, he doesn't feel anything because they killed someone over it. They really did. So I mean, it's kind of a subplot in the book, but a lot of this book just deals a lot with growing up and learning how to deal with and understand that you just have to accept emotions. And one of those emotions is guilt and grief, and realizing that you fuck up sometimes, and sometimes you fuck up really, really bad. And there's not a lot that can be changed about that in the end. You just have to accept that it happens, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life, which I think is a lesson we can all learn sometimes. That's that. That's my thoughts on Home After Dark. I don't even remember the number scales that I'm using. Sometimes it's 5s and sometimes it's 10. I think I'm using 10 stars. Boy, oh boy. 7. I really do enjoy this. Yeah, I think a 7's fine enough. I don't know exactly where I'm going to place this. Personally, I feel bad about just categorizing this as a graphic novel, because it's a young adult fiction. It just happens to choose the medium of a graphic novel. And future me and any other people that might be English teachers of some sort, or parents in general, of like looking at what your kid reads and whatnot. Graphic novels are still novels. Just because they have pictures in them doesn't mean that they're for babies or for children. There's still heavy messages in there, and there's still a lot of reading, there's still a lot of understanding in there. So graphic novels should not be classified as graphic novels. They're novels that happen to have pictures in them and be told through pictures. But that's that. That's my little graphic novel thing. 7 out of 10. I think I was using 10. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.